Hey guys, tonight we're going to step back in time to a place where being too pretty wasn't a blessing, but a beautifully wrapped curse. We're traveling to ancient China, and yes, you have been gifted with a face that could, as they say, cause the downfall of cities. It's a world where your face could launch 1,000 whispers long before it ever launched a ship. Honestly, given the era, you'd probably be more focused on the daily grind than your looks. But destiny has other plans. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. While you're at it, let me know in the comments what city you're listening from, and what time it is for you. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice isn't your reflection, it's the silence. You're walking through your village, a small, sleepy collection of mud brick homes with heavy, thatched roofs that smell of damp earth and wood smoke. The path beneath your cloth-soled shoes is uneven, hardened by the sun and the passage of countless feet and wooden carts. Chickens scatter out of your way, clucking in protest. Normally, this walk to the village well would be filled with the sound of chatter. Women exchanging news, children laughing, the rhythmic thump of a carpenter hammering wood in the distance. But when you appear, a strange quiet descends. It's not an unfriendly silence. Not exactly. It's more an appreciative, almost reverent hush, the kind you might give a sunset or a perfectly bloomed lotus. The village elder, Old Man Wei, stops fanning himself with a woven palm leaf and just squints at you, his deep-set eyes tracing the lines of your face as if HES reading a sacred text. The baker's wife, who is usually shouting about the price of flour, simply smiles and pushes a warm, sticky rice cake into your hand, refusing your coppers. Little moments like these are your entire life. Your beauty is a currency you never asked for, but one you spend every day. You live in a world dictated by the seasons. Your family, like everyone else here, works the land. Life is a cycle of planting rice, tending to the silkworms, and praying for just the right amount of rain. In this world, a person's worth is measured in practicality. A good daughter is one who can weave fine silk, cook a nourishing meal from sparse ingredients, and manage a household with quiet diligence. You can do all those things. You are diligent. You are respectful. But nobody ever talks about that. They only talk about your face. They say your skin is like moonlight on fresh snow, that your eyebrows arch like the leaves of a distant willow, and your lips hold the faint blush of a peach blossom. These are the words the traveling scholar used last spring, and they stuck. He wrote a short, simple poem about you, and now those words echo in the whispers of the villagers. This is, of course, a classic feature of ancient Chinese aesthetics, where beauty was often described with metaphors from nature. Your features aren't just features, they are a living painting. But there's a strange and little-known flip side to this. This focus on your appearance has become a source of anxiety for your parents. In a world steeped in physiognomies, the art of face reading your beauty is also an omen. Some of the older women whisper that your eyes, shaped like almonds, hold what they call peach blossom luck. It sounds romantic, but it's a term that often foretells a life filled with complicated romantic entanglements and misfortune. They see your face not just as beautiful, but as a map of a potentially tragic destiny. A gift from the heavens, yes, but a dangerous one. The praise feels less like a compliment and more like a prophecy. A girl with a face like that won't be tethered to a farmer's life for long, they say. Such beauty is meant for a gilded cage. The words are meant to be flattering, a recognition of your extraordinariness, but they land on you with the weight of a sentence. You hear the gossip slip through the thin paper windows as you pass by. It makes you wonder how, in a place without any modern communication, a reputation can become so pervasive. Historians still debate the true speed of information in these tight-knit, seemingly isolated communities. Was it simply idle chatter passed from one courtyard to the next, or was there a more structured, albeit informal, network of communication that could make a single person's name or face the talk of an entire region in a matter of weeks? For you, it just means you feel watched. Always. As you lower the wooden bucket into the cool, dark well, you catch a glimpse of your reflection in the rippling water. The face that stares back is a stranger's. It's the face of a village legend. They're the poem of a prophecy. It is beautiful, you suppose. But as you haul the heavy bucket up, the water sloshing over the sides and soaking your sleeves, you can't help but wish, just for a day, that you could be invisible. That wish for invisibility evaporates like morning mist under a harsh sun. It happens a few days later. Life has a funny way of answering your deepest desires with their exact opposite. You're in the small, dusty courtyard behind your house, mending a fishing net with your father. The work is familiar, the silence comfortable. Then, you'll hear it. A sound that doesn't belong in your world. It's not the clucking of chickens or the lowing of the neighbor's ox. It's the steady, rhythmic jingle of bronze bells and the low rumble of heavy wheels on the dirt track leading to your village. It's a sound of wealth, of importance, a sound from a different story. You and your father exchange a look. His face, usually so placid, is a mask of confusion and unease. Visitors are rare, and visitors in a fine, lacquered carriage pulled by 2 strong horses are unheard of. The entire village seems to hold its breath. The carriage, a gleaming black box trimmed with polished brass, rolls to a stop not far from your home. Damon emerges. He isn't a soldier or a merchant. He is dressed in fine, deep blue silk, his robes immaculate despite the dust of the road. His hat is tall and black, the mark of a government official. He moves with a slow, deliberate grace, his hands, pale and smooth, clasped behind his back. He is a creature of the capital, and he looks as out of place here as a pearl in a bowl of brown rice. His eyes scan the village, passing over the curious faces peeking from doorways, until they land on you. It's not a leering gaze, nothing so crude. It is something far more unnerving. It is a look of assessment, of appraisal, the look a connoisseur gives the piece of rare porcelain. He doesn't smile, he simply nods, as if confirming something to himself. Then he speaks, his voice calm and clear, addressing your father who is already bowed low, his forehead nearly touching the ground. The official asks for some water and a place to rest from his journey. It's a request that cannot be refused. Inside your small, dark home, the air grows thick with tension. You serve him tea, your hands trembling so slightly you pray he doesn't notice. He accepts the cup with a quiet thank you, but his eyes follow your every movement. This is the moment your life pivots. After a few pleasantries about the harvest and the weather, the official gets to the point. He speaks not of your beauty directly, but of duty, honor, and the Son of Heaven, the Emperor. He says the imperial court is seeking young women of grace and virtue to serve in the palace. It is, he explains, the highest honor a family can receive. To have a daughter chosen is to bring glory to one's ancestors and prosperity to one's village. This was the reality of the imperial selection system, often known as 1FEII. It was a highly organized, empire-wide search, presented as a patriotic duty and a blessing, masking the fact that it was, for the families, a command. Your father says nothing. His head is still bowed. Your mother, standing frozen by the door, looks pale as a ghost. The official's words are like honey, but the weight behind them is iron. This isn't an invitation, it's a summons. He has asked if you want to go. He has informed your family that you have been found. Then comes a truly bizarre and chilling part of the process. The official begins to ask you questions, his gaze analytical. He asks you to speak so he can hear the timbre of your voice. He looks at your hands, noting the shape of your fingers. He even walks around you, observing your posture and the way you stand. This was a very real, if unsettling, part of the selection. It wasn't just about a pretty face. Imperial selectors had detailed criteria that would feel more at home in a livestock competition. They checked the texture of the hair, the clarity of the eyes, the smoothness of the skin, the proportions of the body. They even believed they could judge a woman's character and health from these tiny, specific physical attributes. A voice that was too sharp was seen as a sign of a shrewish nature. Skin that was too rough was a sign of poor health. You are being graded, piece by piece. He seems satisfied. He turns back to your father and names a sum of gold that will be gifted to your family. It's more money than your father could earn in 100 lifetimes. It is both a bride price and a payment for your entire future. A tempting offer perhaps, but it is also a terrifying one. Historians have long debated the true nature of these encounters. Official court records paint a picture of patriotic families joyfully sending their daughters to serve the emperor. But folk tales and poems often tell a different story, a story of tears, of heartbreak, of families forced to give up their daughters to a fate they could not control. Was it seen as an opportunity or a tragedy? The truth, as is often the case, probably lies somewhere in the complex, tear-stained middle. For your parents, you can see the conflict in their eyes, the fear of refusing, the allure of the gold, and the profound sorrow of losing their child to a distant, gilded world from which she will likely never return. In the end, there is no choice to be made. Your father, his voice barely a whisper, accepts the great honor. The official smiles for the first time. It doesn't reach his eyes. He says his attendants will return in 3 days to escort you to the capital. And just like that, with a few soft words in the dim light of your tiny home, your fate is sealed. The knock on the door you never heard has already echoed through the rest of your life. The 3 days pass in a blur of surreal preparations and unspoken goodbyes. The news of your selection spreads through the village like wildfire. The official's carriage, a symbol of distant, unimaginable power, has left its mark. The villagers' gazes have changed again. The quiet reverence is now mixed with something else, a touch of envy, a heavy dose of pity, and a palpable sense of distance. You are no longer one of them. You are now a creature of the imperial palace, a person who belongs to a story they will only ever hear about in rumors. Your mother spends these days in a flurry of activity, a desperate attempt to channel her grief into practical tasks. She packs you a small bundle with a change of clothes, a comb carved from peach wood, and a small pouch of dried herbs from her garden, a familiar scent of home meant to ward off travel sickness. She doesn't speak much, but her hands are never still. She mends a tiny tear in your sleeve that no one else would ever notice. She re-braids your hair a dozen times, her fingers lingering as if trying to memorize the feel of it. These are the small, heartbreaking rituals of farewell. Your father is quieter. He spends hours polishing his tools, his back to you. But one evening, he takes you to the small ancestral shrine in the corner of your home. He lights a stick of incense, the fragrant smoke curling towards the small, wooden tablets bearing the names of your ancestors. He tells you to kneel. Do not forget them, he says, his voice thick with emotion. Wherever you go, they go with you. Do not bring them shame. It's his way of saying be strong, be smart, be careful. In a society centered on filial piety and ancestor worship, this was the most profound advice he could give. Your actions would no longer just reflect on you, but on generations past and future. It's a heavy burden to place on your young shoulders. On the 3rd day, the carriage returns, but this time it is accompanied by 2 guards on horseback and a stern-faced older woman. The chaperone, she looks you over with the same critical eye as the official, her lips set in a permanent thin line of disapproval. It's time to go. The entire village gathers to watch you leave. It feels less like a celebration and more like a funeral procession. Your mother finally breaks, her silent tears turning into quiet sobs as she clutches your hand one last time. You hug her tightly, burying your face in her shoulder. breathing in that familiar smell of hearth smoke and sun-dried linen. You climb into the carriage, the door shutting behind you with a solid, final thud. The journey to the capital is long and jarring. The world you knew, a small circle of familiar fields and faces, expands with every turn of the wheel. You've never been more than a day's walk from your home, and now you are traveling for weeks. The carriage is comfortable enough, with silk cushions, but it feels like a cage. You peer through the small, latticed window, watching the landscape change from the lush, green rice paddies of your home to the drier, dusty airplanes of the north. Along the way, the convoy stops at official post houses for the night. These are bustling, noisy places, filled with traveling merchants, couriers, and other officials. Here, you get your first real taste of the outside world's reaction to your appearance. When you step out of the carriage, a hush falls over the courtyard. Men stop their conversations to stare, their gazes a mixture of awe and raw desire. Women whisper behind their hands, their eyes filled with a complicated cocktail of admiration and resentment. This is a fascinating and often overlooked aspect of travel in ancient China for a woman of your supposed status. A respectable woman, especially one destined for the palace, would typically be kept in strict seclusion. The fact that you are seen at all is a minor scandal, a necessary evil of the journey. You are a living treasure being transported, and your chaperone does her best to shield you, hurrying you inside. But she can't stop the stares. You're a spectacle. One evening, a drunken merchant, emboldened by rice wine, tries to offer your guards a bag of silver for just a moment of the lady's time. The guards, stone-faced and professional, refuse him curtly, their hands resting on the hilts of their swords. The incident is over in moments, but it leaves you shaken. It's the first time you've seen your beauty quantified so crudely, turned into a commodity to be bought and sold. Here's a peculiar little detail about these journeys: the diet. You are fed well, but the food is deliberately plain. Simple rice, steamed vegetables, a little fish. Your chaperone explains that a rich, greasy diet is believed to cloud the complexion and dull the spirit. You are being purified, inside and out. It's another reminder that your body is no longer your own. It is a vessel being prepared for a higher purpose, and every aspect of its maintenance is now under strict control. Historians debate whether these dietary restrictions were based on early traditional medicine concepts, or if they were simply another to love psychological control, constantly reminding the chosen women of their special, infragile status. The effect, for you, is the same. It's a constant, nagging reminder of your gilded servitude. As the carriage rumbles on, you have nothing to do but think. You think about your family, your village, the simple life you've left behind. Was it really so bad? The hard work, the muddy paths, the predictable seasons. It all seems like a lost paradise now. You are traveling towards a life of unimaginable luxury, a world of silk and jade, that you've never felt so poor. The journey isn't just carrying you across the country, it's carrying you away from yourself. After weeks of travel, the dust of the road finally gives way to the paved avenues of a sprawling metropolis. The capital, the sheer scale of it is overwhelming. The noise, the smells, the sheer number of people, it's a chaotic, vibrant assault on your senses, but you don't get to see much of it. Your carriage bypasses the bustling markets and crowded tea houses, taking you instead to a quiet, secluded compound on the city's edge. This isn't the imperial palace. Not yet. This is your skull. The place is called the Palace of Gathered Elegance, a poetic name for what is essentially a high-stakes finishing school for imperial candidates. You are led through a moon gate into a series of serene courtyards, filled with manicured gardens, koi ponds, and elegant pavilions. It's beautiful, but the beauty is cold, precise, and utterly silent. You are not alone. Dozens of other young women are here, all chosen from different corners of the empire, all beautiful, all carrying the same look of bewildered apprehension. You are now just one flower in a vast, competitive garden. You're old. Simple clothes are taken away, replaced by robes of pale, unadorned silk. The stern-faced chaperone who brought you here hands you over to a new set of instructors, older women, former palace ladies themselves, with faces that betray no emotion. They are your teachers, your judges, and your jailers. From this moment on, your life is a rigid timetable. You wake before sunrise and sleep long after sunset. Every hour of your day is scheduled. The curriculum is intense. You are taught the 4 arts of the scholar gentry, the zither kin, the board game goki, calligraphy, shu, and painting ruak. These were essential skills for any refined lady, meant to demonstrate her cultural sophistication on dinner harmony. The goal wasn't just to learn them, but to excel, to embody the grace and intelligence they represented. You spend hours tracing characters with a fine-tipped brush. You're risk-taking. You practice plucking the strings of the zither. Your fingers raw, striving for the perfect, ethereal note. But the lessons go far beyond the arts. They are training you to become a living work of art. You are taught how to walk, not just walk, but glide, with tiny, mincing steps, your body swaying like a willow in the breeze. This was achieved through grueling practice, sometimes balancing a book on your head or a bowl of water in your hands. You are taught how to speak, your voice modulated to be soft, pleasing, and never too loud. You are taught how to smile, a subtle, enigmatic smile that reveals nothing of your true feelings. You are taught how to pour tea, how to arrange flowers, how to apply your own makeup in the prescribed courtly style, a face of powdered white, with a small, red cherry blossom mouth. One of the most peculiar and frankly bizarre parts of your training is learning how to feign elegantly. This is a strange little tidbit of palace etiquette that rarely makes it into the history books. In a world where direct confrontation was forbidden and emotional outbursts were a sign of poor breeding, a well-timed, graceful swoon could be a powerful tool. It could be used to exit an awkward situation, to show delicate distress, or to gain the sympathy of a powerful figure. So you practice. You learn to fall without flailing, to collapse into a beautiful, helpless heap, like a silk scarf dropping to the floor. It feels absurd, theatrical, but you learn that in the palace, everything is theater. You also receive a rigorous education in history and literature, but with a specific, curated focus. You study the lives of virtuous empresses and cautionary tales of consort disastrous women whose jealousy or ambition brought ruin to themselves and the dynasty. The message is clear: your role is to be a beautiful, cultured, and utterly passive ornament. Your intelligence is to be used for appreciating poetry, not for forming opinions. Your knowledge is for pleasant conversation, not for strategic thinking. The competition among the girls is subtle but fierce. You are all in this together, sharing the same dormitories and the same fears. But you are also rivals. Every action is observed, every mistake noted. A girl who excels at painting might earn a rare nod of approval from an instructor. A girl who speaks out of turn is punished with menial chores or public criticism. You learn to be wary, to hold your tongue, to never reveal your strengths or weaknesses. You form tentative friendships, whispering after lights out, sharing stories of the homes you miss. But there's an unspoken understanding that any one of you could be sent home in disgrace at a moment's notice, or worse, chosen for a glory that will separate you forever. Historians are still debating the psychological impact of these training institutions. Were they successful in creating the perfect consorts, or did they simply breed anxiety, conformity, and deep-seated resentment? The official records, written by men, praise the system for producing women of unparalleled grace. But what was the cost to the women themselves for you? The training is a slow, methodical erasure of the girl you were. The girl who mended fishing nets and ran barefoot in the dirt is being polished away, layer by layer. You are becoming smoother, brighter, more refined, and more hollow. You are learning that beauty is not a gift you are born with in this world. It is a craft, a discipline, a performance. and you must perfect it if you hope to survive what comes next. The day of graduation from the palace of gathered delegates arrives without fanfare. There is no ceremony, no celebration, just a quiet announcement. You and a select few others have been deemed worthy. The rest of the girls, their faces pale with disappointment, are sent away, some back to their families with a small dowry, others assigned to lesser roles as palace servants. There is no time for goodbyes. The system is as efficient as it is heartless. You are put into another carriage. This one, even more ornate than the last. It travels a short distance through the capital before passing through a series of towering gates, each one more imposing than the one before. Guards in gleaming armor stand like statues, their faces impassive. The air itself seems to change, growing still and heavy. And then you see it, the Forbidden City. It's not just a palace, it's a city within a city. A vast labyrinth of golden roofed halls, marble courtyards, and crimson walls. The scale of it is designed to make you feel small, insignificant, and it works. The sheer grandeur is breathtaking, but it's an intimidating, almost oppressive beauty. You've traded one gilded cage for another, much larger one. You are escorted through a bewildering series of courtyards and corridors, the sound of your footsteps echoing in the immense quiet. You are now inside the inner court, the exclusive domain of the emperor, his empress, his consorts, and thousands of eunuchs and palace maids. This is your new world, and its first lesson is silence. You are assigned to a small, but exquisitely furnished, suite of rooms in one of the side palaces. It's more luxurious than anything you could have ever imagined. The furniture is carved from fragrant rosewood. The bed is draped in embroidered silk, and a bronze mirror, polished to a perfect shine, sits on a lacquer table. A team of young palace maids and an older, supervisory eunuch are assigned to you. They bow low when you enter, their faces carefully neutral. They are your servants, but you understand immediately that they are also your watchers. Their loyalty is not to you, but to the palace hierarchy. The chief eunuch assigned to your quarter, a man named Mr. Ming, explains the basic rules of your new life. His voice is high-pitched and dry, like rustling paper. He tells you which areas are forbidden, when you are expected to rise and sleep, how to request an audience, and, most importantly, how to never, ever speak the emperor's name directly. He is the son of heaven. His majesty are simply the lord of 10,000 years. Breaking these rules of etiquette can have dire consequences. It's a classic example of how power was maintained through ritual and language. The emperor wasn't just a man, he was a living deity, and the entire structure of the palace was built to reinforce that idea. Here's a curious little detail about your new home: the windows. The paper in your windows is not the simple, coarse paper of your village. It's a special, translucent kind, made with silk threads, allowing light in, but blurring the view from the outside. More intriguingly, some of the windows in the Forbidden City were said to be made from thin sheets of mica, or even imported glass in later dynasties, a huge luxury. But for now, your paper windows serve as a perfect metaphor for your life. You can see the light, that you can't see the world clearly, and the world can't see you. You are shielded, but also imprisoned. Your days fall into a new, monotonous rhythm. You are no longer in training, but in a state of perpetual waiting. You practice your zither, you paint, you play solitary games of go against yourself. You spend hours with your maids, learning the intricate art of embroidery. It's a life of enforced leisure. You have everything you could possibly need: fine food, beautiful clothes, servants to attend to your every whim. But you have no freedom. You cannot leave your courtyard without permission. You cannot choose who you see or what you do. You are, essentially, a beautiful object on a shelf, waiting to be noticed. This period of waiting could last for months, even years. There were thousands of women in the palace, and many would live and die within its walls without ever being summoned by the emperor. Historians still debate the exact number of women housed in the Forbidden City at any given time, as records are often vague. Some estimates for certain dynasties run into the thousands. A staggering population of cloistered women whose sole purpose was to be available to one man. It's a demographic reality that is almost impossible to comprehend. You learn about the complex hierarchy of the inner court not through lessons, but through whispers and observations. You learn that the Empress is the undisputed ruler of this domain. Below her are consorts of various ranks, imperial honored consorts, imperial concubines, and on down through a dizzying number of titles. Your current rank is one of the lowest, a noble lady. Your rank determines the size of your staff, the quality of your food, the amount of silk you are allocated, and even the type of gifts you receive on holidays. It is a rigid, unforgiving caste system. You are a tiny, beautiful screw in a vast, intricate machine. The machine's purpose is singular: to serve the emperor and to produce an heir. Every rule, every ritual, every silent courtyard is designed to support that function. Your personal happiness, your desires, your past, none of it matters. You are here to fulfill a role. As you sit by your window, watching a single autumn leaf drift down into the perfectly raked gravel of your courtyard, you feel a profound sense of loneliness. The palace is the center of the world, but for you, it feels like the end of it. The waiting ends on an ordinary afternoon. The air is warm and still, thick with the scent of blooming osmanthus from the courtyard. You are practicing calligraphy, your mind lost in the graceful flow of ink on paper, when Mr. Peng, the chief eunuch, glides into your room. His usual placid expression is replaced by one of quiet urgency. He bows low and announces, "His Majesty will be dining in the Hall of Mental Cultivation tonight. You are to attend." Your heart does a strange, painful leap in your chest. It's a feeling you can't quite name, a jolt of pure terror mixed with a flicker of something that might be excitement. This is it. The moment your entire life has been building towards since that carriage first rolled into your village. The maids spring into action, their movements swift and practiced. A bath is drawn, scented with fragrant oils. They lay out a new gown of deep crimson silk, embroidered with delicate golden peonies. Your hair is washed, dried, and styled into an elaborate coiffure, held in place by jade and pearl pins. Your makeup is applied with painstaking care, transforming your face into the perfect, impassive mask of courtly beauty. The process takes hours. It's a ritual of transformation, designed to strip away the last vestiges of your individuality and present you as a flawless, imperial treasure. As you look at your reflection in the bronze mirror, the face staring back is breathtakingly beautiful, but it feels like someone else's. The girl from the village is buried so deep now, she might as well be a ghost. As dusk falls, you are led by Mr. Peng through a winding series of corridors and covered walkways. The journey is silent, punctuated only by the soft swish of your silk slippers on the polished stone floors. You pass by other courtyards, catching fleeting glimpses of other women, standing by their windows, their faces silhouetted against the lamplight. You feel their eyes on you, a mixture of envy and solidarity. Tonight, it is your turn. You arrive at the Hall of Mental Cultivation, one of the most important residential palaces for the Emperor. The air here is different, charged with power. You are not taken into the main hall, but to a small, elegant side chamber. The room is aglow with the soft light of lanterns. A low table is set for two with exquisite porcelain dishes, silver chopsticks, and jade cups. The air smells of sandalwood, incense, and expensive food. You are instructed to kneel on a cushion and wait. The wait is agonizing. Every sound makes you jump. The rustle of a curtain, the distant chime of a bell. And then, you hear footsteps, heavier than the soft shuffle of the eunuchs. The footsteps of a master. The door slides open, and the emperor enters. He is not the fearsome dragon god you imagined. He is a man, older than you expected, with tired eyes and the weight of an empire settled on his shoulders. He is dressed in informal robes of deep yellow, the imperial color. He doesn't look at you at first. He sits at the table, and a eunuch immediately pours him a cup of warm wine. He sips it slowly, his gaze distant. Then, his eyes fall on you. This is the gaze you've been prepared for. It's not the leering stare of the merchant, nor the appreciative glances of the villagers. It is a look of absolute ownership. It's calm, patient, and all-encompassing. He sees your beauty, yes, but he sees it as one might see a prized vase or a magnificent horse. He sees you as a possession. He gestures for you to rise and sit. You move with the rehearsed grace you were taught, your heart pounding against your ribs. He asks you your name. You tell him. Your voice is soft whisper, just as you practiced. He asks you where you are from. He asks you if you can play the zither. The conversation is simple, almost banal. It's a test. He is judging your demeanor, your voice, your grace under pressure. This initial meeting was incredibly important. According to court annals, a woman could be dismissed and never seen again for a single perceived flaw, a nervous tremor in her voice, a clumsy movement, or a look in her eye that was deemed too bold. Here's a bizarre little detail of palace protocol: the emperor was rarely, if ever, served by the woman herself during these initial encounters. Eunuchs would place food on his plate. This was for security. The fear of poison was constant and all-pervasive. Every dish had been tested by a taster beforehand, so use it there. Not eating, not serving, just being. A beautiful, silent companion to his meal. As the meal progresses, he seems to relax slightly. He tells a small, unamusing story about his favorite horse. You smile your practiced, enigmatic smile. He asks you to recite a poem. You choose one by a famous poet, a classic verse about the melancholy of autumn. Your voice steady and clear. He nods, a flicker of approval in his tired eyes. He has seen hundreds, perhaps thousands, of beautiful women. He is not easily impressed, but you have passed the initial inspection. You are graceful, you are cultured, and your beauty is, indeed, exceptional. Historians often wonder about the true nature of these encounters. Were they terrifying ordeals, or did some women find a way to connect with the most powerful man in the land? Was it possible to find a spark of genuine human interaction in such a staged, high-stakes environment? The academic world is divided. Some argue it was purely a transaction of power, while others suggest that moments of genuine affection, however fleeting, must have occurred. For you, in this moment, there is no affection. There is only a terrifying, razor-thin wire you are walking. One wrong step, one wrong word, and you will fall into the silent obscurity of the palace's forgotten corners. As the dinner ends and he rises to leave, he gives a quiet order to the chief eunuch, an order that will change your status, end your life, forever. The emperors order echoes through the inner court with the speed of a silent thunderclap. The next morning, you are awakened not by the gentle prodding of a maid, but by the arrival of an imperial decree, delivered by a high-ranking eunuch from the Office of Rights. It is read aloud in a formal, sing-song voice. You have been elevated. You are no longer a mere noble lady. You have been granted the title of Imperial Concubine of the 4th rank, along with a new, poetic honorific name, Luminous. The promotion is instantaneous and its effects are tangible. You are moved from your small, quiet courtyard to a larger, more opulent suite of rooms in a more prestigious section of the palace. Your staff doubles. Your allocation of silk, charcoal for warmth, and daily provisions increases dramatically. You are presented with chests of new jewelry, exquisite pieces of carved jade, lustrous pearls, and delicate gold filigree. Servants who once looked through you now bow lower, their faces a mask of deference. Your name, Concubine Luminous, is now on the lips of everyone in the inner court. The emperor visits you again and again for a brief, intoxicating period. You are the center of his world. He dines with you, listens to you play the zither, and praises your paintings. He gifts you rare, exotic things, a bolt of shimmering cloth of gold from Persia, a white peacock for your new garden, a set of inkstones carved from a single piece of river jade. This is the golden moment for an imperial consort, the period of intense favor, known as Dichong, was what every woman in the palace dreamed of. It was a time of immense privilege and, more importantly, power. Your family back home receives a vast sum of gold and the title of minor nobility for your father. Your village is granted a 3-year exemption from taxes. You have fulfilled your purpose. You have brought glory to your ancestors. You feel a sense of dizzying vertigo. Just weeks ago, you were a simple village girl. Now, you hold the attention of the most powerful man on earth. In his presence, you are careful, attentive, always striving to be the perfect companion. You are a gentle breeze in his turbulent life, a peaceful island in his sea of endless state affairs. You listen more than you speak. You soothe, you entertain, you please. But this newfound happiness is a fragile, delicate thing, as thin as the wings of a cicada. You quickly learn that the Emperor's favor is a double-edged sword. It elevates you, but it also isolates you and makes you a target. The life of a favorite consort is lived under a microscope. Every word you say, every gesture you make, is noted, analyzed, and whispered about in the endless echo chamber of the palace. Here's a small, peculiar detail that highlights this pressure of the record-keeping. Every time the Emperor visited a consort, the time, date, and duration of the visit were meticulously recorded by the eunuchs of the Bureau of Attendants. These records were not for sentimental reasons, they were a political ledger. They were used to track favor, to predict promotions, and, most crucially, to verify the paternity of any potential heirs. So your moments of intimacy are, in fact, officially documented acts of state. There is no privacy here. Your life is now a matter of public record. This constant scrutiny breeds a unique kind of paranoia. You start to see shadows in every corner. Is the maid who compliments your new hairpin sincere? Or is she a spy for a rival? Is the eunuch who brings you your morning tea smiling because HES friendly? Or because he knows something you don't? The palace is a world of smiling masks, and you have no way of knowing what lies behind them. Historians have long debated the psychological toll this environment took on the women of the inner court. Official histories paint a picture of serene and contented ladies, but personal letters and poems that have survived often reveal deep feelings of loneliness, anxiety, and homesickness. The term palace grievances Gongyuan became a whole genre of poetry, expressing the sorrow of these cloistered women. Was it a beautiful dream or a waking nightmare for you? It is both. You relish the warmth of the Emperor's attention and the luxury it brings, but you lie awake at night, your heart pounding, terrified that it will all disappear as quickly as it came. You are walking on a tightrope made of spun gold. The view is magnificent, but the fall is deadly. You know that the Emperor's attention is a fickle, wandering thing. He is surrounded by beauty. New, younger women are always arriving, graduating from the same finishing school you attended. The luminous concubine is today's favorite, but who will be tomorrow's your brie? A glorious moment of grace is not a secure position, it's a temporary peak. And from here, the only way to go is down. The warmth of the sun on your face feels wonderful, but you are acutely aware of the long, cold shadows you are casting, and in those shadows, others are watching and waiting. The first sign of trouble isn't a dramatic confrontation. It's a whisper. It reaches you indirectly, as most things in the palace do. You're having your hair brushed by a young maid, a quiet girl you've started to trust. When she mentions, with feigned casualness, that the noble consort Xian was admiring the bolt of Persian cloth of gold the Emperor gifted you, the maid's eyes meet yours in the bronze mirror for a fraction of a second, and in that fleeting glance, a warning is passed. Noble consort Xian is a woman of a higher rank, a veteran of the inner court who has held the Emperor's affection. For years, She is known for her quiet dignity and her powerful family connections. Her admiration is not a compliment, it's a subtle assertion of her seniority, a reminder that gifts, like favor, are part of a complex economy of prestige that she is an expert in. Soon, the whispers multiply. You hear that another consort, the young and fiery virtuous Lady May, threw a priceless porcelain cup against the wall of her chamber after hearing the Emperor had spent 3 consecutive nights with you. The story is told as a juicy piece of gossip, but you understand its true meaning. It's a signal of rising tensions. Your sunrise has disrupted the delicate ecosystem of the inner court. You are the new variable, the foreign element that has thrown everything off balance. This is the insidious nature of palace intrigue. It's a war fought not with swords, but with words, glances, and carefully planted rumors. It's a game of soft power, a concept we associate with modern geopolitics, but one that was perfected in the confines of the Forbidden City. A consort's power wasn't just based on the Emperor's favor, but on her network of allies, her ability to gather information, and her skill at navigating the treacherous social currents. You start to experience this directly. You pay a mandatory courtesy visit to a higher-ranking consort, only to be left waiting for an hour in an antechamber before being seen. The consort is perfectly polite, but the message of the long wait is clear. You may have the Emperor's attention now, but you are still a junior. Your place in the hierarchy will be respected. At a banquet, a bowl of the season's most prized lychees is served. The best and ripest fruits are offered first to the Empress, then to the highest-ranking consorts. By the time the platter reaches you, only the smaller, less desirable fruits are left. It's a tiny, public humiliation, so subtle that to complain would make you look petty and foolish. You learn to read the silences, to interpret the subtext of a seemingly innocent compliment. You become a master of non-committal answers and serene smiles. Your training at the Palace of Gathered Delegates was about performing beauty. Your real education is happening now, and the subject is survival. Here's a fashionably weird little tactic used in these silent wars: gift giving. A rival might send you an incredibly lavish and beautiful gift, say, a pair of kingfisher feather earrings. On the surface, it's a gesture of friendship, but it's actually a trap. If you accept and wear them, you might be accused of being too ostentatious, of trying to outshine your superiors. If you refuse it, you risk causing offense. The most sophisticated players would accept the gift with profuse thanks, and then put it away in a locked chest, never to be seen again. The gift was a move in a game of Go, and the correct response was a quiet, defensive placement of your own stone. The pressure to produce an heir, the ultimate source of security for a consort, becomes immense. Your monthly cycles, once a private matter, are now tracked by the palace eunuchs and physicians. Every month that passes without a pregnancy is a mark against you, a sign that your favor might be fruitless. This obsession with procreation was, of course, central to the dynasty as survival. But for the women, they turned their bodies into political battlegrounds. Historians continue to debate the extent to which consorts used various traditional medicines, potions, and rituals to try and ensure conception. It was a world where folk remedies and desperate hopes mingled with the cold, clinical reality of dynastic expectations. Did these secret formulas work? Almost certainly not, but they offered a sliver of control in a life that had none. You feel the walls closing in. The beautiful courtyards and gilded rooms of your palace now feel like an arena. The other women are not necessarily monsters. They are just like you, products of the same system, trapped in the same cage, playing the same game. They are women who miss their families, who feel lonely and afraid, and who are fighting for their survival in the only way they know how. Their jealousy is not just personal, it is structural. In a system where the favor of one man is the only resource, competition is inevitable. Your gain is, by definition, their loss. You lie awake at night, thinking of the village baker's wife who gave you a warm rice cake for free. It was such a simple, uncomplicated act of kindness. Here, in the heart of the empire, surrounded by unimaginable wealth, you realize you would trade all the jade and pearls in your collection for just one more moment of that simple, honest human connection. At the absolute apex of the inner court's intricate pyramid sits one woman, the Empress. She is not just another consort with a higher title, she is a different entity altogether. She is the official spouse of the Emperor, the mother of the nation, a symbol of female virtue and stability. And you are now firmly on her radar. Your first formal audience with the Empress is a terrifying affair. You are led into her palace, a grand and imposing structure at the very heart of the Forbidden City. Unlike the vibrant, almost decadent, atmosphere of the favored consort's quarters, the Empress's palace is austere, formal, and deeply intimidating. The colors are muted, the servants move with ghost-like silence, and the air is thick with the scent of old wooden cold incense. The Empress is seated on a large, throne-like chair, flanked by her most senior ladies-in-waiting. She is older, her face a mask of serene, impenetrable dignity. She is not beautiful in the same way you are. Her beauty lies not in the bloom of youth, but in her perfect, unshakable composure. When you perform the full kowtow, touching your forehead to the floor, she lets you stay there for a few moments longer than is comfortable. It's a subtle, almost imperceptible exercise of power. When she finally tells you to rise, she looks at you, her gaze not unkind, but heavy with the weight of her position. She speaks to you in a calm, measured tone, inquiring about your family and your adjustment to palace life. Every word is polite, every sentiment proper. She even compliments your zither playing, which she has heard good things about. But beneath the surface of this pleasant conversation, there is a clear, unspoken message. She is the sun, and you are merely a planet, a bright one at the moment, but a planet nonetheless. Your orbit is determined by her gravitational pull. The relationship between the Empress and the Emperor's favorite concubines is one of the most complex and debated dynamics in Chinese history. Officially, the Empress was meant to be above jealousy, managing the harem with fairness and grace, ensuring harmony. She was the manager, and the other women were her staff. In reality, it was often a deeply fraught relationship. An empress who failed to produce an heir herself might feel threatened by a younger, fertile consort. A favorite who became too arrogant or influential could be seen as a threat to the empress's authority and, by extension, the stability of the court. You learn to navigate this new, critical relationship with extreme caution. You pay your respects to her every morning, without fail. You never wear colors or jewelry that might be seen as competing with hers. When you are in her presence, you are the epitome of modesty and deference. You are playing a role, the grateful, humble junior who understands and respects the established order. Here is a truly bizarre piece of palace etiquette that illustrates the Empress's power: the serving of Fatale. On certain formal occasions, when the Emperor dined with the Empress, his favorite consort of the moment might be required to attend. However, she would not sit and eat. Her role would be to stand silently by and, at the conclusion of the meal, present the Emperor with a warm, scented towel to wipe his hands. It was a position of intimate servitude, performed right under the watchful eye of the Empress. It was a ritual designed to simultaneously display the Emperor's favor and reinforce the consort's subordinate status to the Empress. It was a masterclass in psychological politics. You begin to understand that the Empress's power is not just symbolic. She is the manager of the inner court's vast and complex bureaucracy. She has the authority to reward and punish other consorts for breaches of etiquette or moral conduct. A quiet word from her to the Emperor could ruin you. She could have you reassigned to a remote, undesirable palace for a minor infraction. She could cut your allowances, dismiss your trusted servants, or simply deny you permission to leave your courtyard. Her power is quiet, indirect, but absolute. Historians often struggle to piece together the true personalities of these empresses. Court records praise their virtues, their benevolence, their wisdom, their diligence, but these are official portraits, carefully constructed. Letters, diaries, or any form of personal expression from an empress are incredibly rare. They were institutions as much as they were individuals. We can only guess at the loneliness, the frustration, and the immense pressure they must have felt. Did they resent the young beauties who captured their husband's heart, or did they, as pragmatic rulers of their own domain, see them as necessary parts of the dynastic machine? It's a question that remains largely unanswered, locked behind the silent, crimson walls of their palaces. For you, the Empress becomes a constant, shadowy presence in your life. She is the moon to the Emperor's sun, and her light, though colder and more distant, is just as powerful. You realize that winning the Emperor's affection was only the first, and perhaps easiest, part of the game. Surviving the intricate, invisible web of power woven by the women around you, and especially by the woman at its center, is the real challenge. Your beauty got you in the door, but it is your intelligence, your caution, and your ability to understand these silent power dynamics that will keep you alive. As you navigate the treacherous waters of the inner court, you become aware of a third, shadowy power base, one that operates in the spaces between the emperor and his consorts. The eunuchs, they are everywhere. They are the silent, ever-present bloodstream of the forbidden city. They guard the gates, deliver the messages, serve the food, manage the vast storehouses, and record the daily activities of the palace. They are, in theory, the lowest of servants. In reality, they are the palace's indispensable nervous system. Your chief eunuch, Mr. Peng, who once seemed merely like a stern administrator, now reveals himself to be a much more complex figure. He is your primary source of information, your advisor, and your gatekeeper. He knows everything. He knows which consorts are in favor and which are not. He knows the emperor's moods, his favorite foods, his secret anxieties. He knows which visiting official pleased the emperor and which one earned his ire. This information is currency, and Mr. Peng is a master baker. You learn that forging a good relationship with your senior eunuch is not just helpful, it's essential for survival. You start to treat Mr. Peng with a new level of respect, not as a servant, but as a valued counselor. You ensure he and his junior eunuchs receive gift pouches of silver, fine silks, or leftover delicacies from your table. This was not seen as bribery in the modern sense. It was a standard, expected part of the palace's informal economy, a way of ensuring loyalty and smooth service. It was the oil that kept the gears of the great machine turning quietly. In return for your generosity, Mr. Peng becomes your eyes and ears. He lets you know, with a subtle turn of phrase, that the emperor is planning a trip to the Western Gardens, and that he is fond of chrysanthemums this time of year. Armed with this knowledge, you can coincidentally be found painting chrysanthemums in your pavilion when the emperor happens to pass by. He tells you that noble consort S brother has just been given a minor promotion in the military, a sign that her family's influence is on the rise. This kind of intelligence is priceless. It allows you to anticipate shifts in the political landscape of the court and adjust your strategy accordingly. Here's a deeply strange and little-known aspect of eunuch power: their control over the green-headed tablets. These were small plaques, usually made of jade or wooden painted green, each bearing the name of a consort. Every night, the chief eunuch of the Bureau of Attendants would present a tray of these tablets to the emperor. The emperor would then choose a consort for the night by flipping over her tablet. The eunuch would then be responsible for all the arrangements. This system gave the eunuchs immense, albeit subtle, power. A eunuch who had been gifted well might place your tablet in a more prominent position on the tray. A eunuch who felt slighted might accidentally forget to include your tablet at all on a given night. They were the architects of opportunity. The most powerful eunuchs, those who served the emperor or empress directly, were formidable figures. They were the gatekeepers to the ultimate power. Getting a message to the emperor had to go through them. They could block access, delay messages, or subtly rephrase a request to cast it in a negative light. They became a dangerous and unpredictable variable in court politics. A powerful eunuch could make or break a consort, or even a high-ranking government minister. Historians have a deeply ambivalent view of eunuchs. The official Confucian histories, written by the scholar bureaucrats, almost universally condemn them. They are portrayed as greedy, corrupt, and power-hungry, a malevolent force that whispered poison into the emperor's ear and brought ruin to dynasties. This narrative was self-serving, as the scholar officials and the court eunuchs were often locked in a bitter struggle for influence over the emperor. This is a major point of academic debate. Were eunuchs a cancer on the political system, or were they unnecessary, a flawed part of the imperial structure, a third pillar of power balancing the emperor and the bureaucracy? The truth is likely that they were both. There were certainly corrupt and dangerous eunuchs, but there were also many who were loyal, competent administrators. You come to see them not as good or evil, but as survivors, just like you, castrated as boys. Often from poor families, they were cut off from the normal path of life, marriage, family, and descendants. The palace was their only home, their only family. Their pursuit of power and wealth was their only way of creating security and meaning in a life that had been fundamentally altered. You see in their eyes a familiar loneliness and a fierce, quiet ambition. You realize that the inner court is not a simple triangle of power between the emperor, the empress, and the concubines. It is a complex, multi-dimensional web, and the eunuchs are the ones who spin the silken threads that connect everyone. They are the unseen hands that can raise you up or pull you down. Your beauty might capture the emperor's eye, but your relationship with these shadowy figures in the background will determine how long you can stay in the light. It starts with a flood. Hundreds of miles away, a major river overflows its banks, inundating farmland and displacing thousands of people. News travels slowly to the capital, arriving as grim reports delivered by weary messengers to the outer court, where the emperor and his ministers conduct the business of the empire. For you, in the secluded world of the inner court, it's a distant tragedy, something you hear about in passing from Mr. Tang. It has nothing to do with you. You, of course, are wrong. In the following weeks, the mood in the Forbidden City sours. The cost of disaster relief is enormous, draining the imperial treasury. Grain prices in the capital begin to rise. There are murmurs of unrest in the provinces. The emperor is stressed, his temper short. His visits to you become less frequent. He is preoccupied with matters of state, spending long hours with his advisors. Then, at a morning court session, a brave or foolish censor, an official whose job it is to criticize the government and the emperor's conducts, admits a memorial to the throne. He argues that this natural disaster is not a random act of nature. It is a sign. Heaven is displeased. According to the ancient philosophy of the mandate of heaven, natural disasters were cosmic warnings that the ruler was failing in his duty. The censor, careful not to directly blame the Son of Heaven, needs a scapegoat, and he finds a perfect one. He writes, in elegant, cutting prose, that in times of hardship, the court should practice frugality and solemnity. Instead, he claims, the palace is awash in extravagance. He speaks of new favorites distracting the emperor from his duties, of expensive trinkets and lavish entertainments. He never mentions your name. He doesn't have to. Everyone knows who he is talking about. You, the newly risen concubine Luminous, the recipient of the Persian cloth of gold and the white peacock, have just become a political symbol. The accusation sticks. The story leaks out of the court session and spreads through the city's tea houses. You are now the fox spirit who has bewitched the emperor, causing him to neglect his duties and anger the gods. The flood is, in a way, your fault. This is the birth of the Hong and Hu O Shui Hongyan Huoshui narrative. which translates roughly to a beautiful face, is a source of disaster. It's a deeply ingrained, misogynistic trope in Chinese history. When things go wrong, a battle is lost, a rebellion breaks out, a flood occurs, blaming a beautiful woman close to the ruler is the easiest and safest political move. It deflects blame from the emperor himself and plays into popular superstition. Suddenly, the gifts that were a sign of your favor become evidence of your guilt. The white peacock in your garden is no longer a symbol of imperial affection, but of wasteful decadence. Your beautiful robes are proof of your vanity. Your skill with the zither is not a cultured talent, but a siren song luring the emperor to his doom. The absurdity of it is staggering. You've never met the sun, sir. You have no understanding of river hydraulics or grain distribution. Your only crime was to be beautiful and to be chosen. But logic has no place in this. You are no longer a person, you are a narrative. Here's a peculiar and telling detail about this phenomenon: the specific animals associated with bewitching women. In folklore, beautiful women who led rulers astray were often said to be disguised fox spirits, supernatural creatures known for their cunning and destructive charm. The association was so strong that calling a woman a fox spirit Huli Jing became a common insult, one that has persisted into the modern era. You have been branded with a mythological curse. The emperor, caught between his affection for you and political pressure, begins to distance himself. It's not a dramatic break, but a slow, chilling withdrawal. His visits cease altogether. The lavish gifts stop coming. When you see him at a distance during a court festival, he avoids your gaze. He has to be seen as a diligent ruler, responsive to the will of heaven and the advice of his ministers. Sacrificing a favorite consort, or at least appearing to, is a small price to pay for political stability. The change in your status is immediate and brutal. The fair-weather friends among the consorts now avoid you. The servants, who once fawned over you, become slow and neglectful. The Empress sends a message, advising you to live more quietly and frugally for the good of the empire. It is a command disguised as a suggestion. Your beautiful clothes are put away, replaced by simple, drab robes. The peacock is quietly removed from your garden. Your world shrinks back to the confines of your lonely courtyard. Historians still debate the sincerity of these accusations. Did the scholar officials genuinely believe that a woman could cause a flood, or was it a cynical, calculated political strategy? Most academics agree it was the latter. The beautiful woman was a convenient weapon in the constant power struggle between the inner court, the emperor's personal sphere, and the outer court, the bureaucracy. By attacking you, they were indirectly attacking the emperor's judgment and personal conduct in a way they couldn't do directly. You are a pawn in a game so large you can barely comprehend its rules. You sit in your silent room, the crimson gown you wore on that first night folded away in a chest, a relic of a different life. You have been branded a red-faced disaster. The first black pot, as the saying goes, has been placed squarely on your back. You did nothing to deserve it, but in the cold calculus of power, your innocence is irrelevant. Your fall from grace grants you a new, unwelcome kind of freedom, the freedom of obscurity. With the emperor's attention turned elsewhere, the intense scrutiny you lived under begins to fade. You are no longer the center of gossip, you are yesterday's news. This period of quiet isolation allows you to observe the palace with a clarity you didn't have before, and in your observations, you discover you are not the only one cursed by beauty. You begin to notice a young man in the palace. He is not a prince or a nobleman. He is one of the imperial bodyguards, a low-ranking officer who stands sentinel at one of the gates near your now secluded courtyard. He is tall and broad-shouldered, but it is his face that is remarkable. He has classical, almost unnerving, perfect features: a straight nose, strong jaw, and eyes that seem to hold a profound, quiet melancholy. In a world of weathered soldiers and hardened guards, he looks like a jade statue that has been brought to life. His name, you learn from the whispers of your maids. His way, and his life, you soon realize, is a mirror image of your own, distorted by gender. The other guards treat him with a mixture of mockery and suspicion. They give him the easiest assignments, but they talk about him behind his back. The maids and junior consorts blush and giggle when he passes, whispering about his phoenix eyes and sword-like eyebrows. Their admiration, however, is tinged with contempt. He is an object of fantasy, not a person. This phenomenon, while less common than the Femme Fatale trope, was a very real part of ancient Chinese court life. The concept of beautiful men, Ming and Z, was well established in literature and history. Men whose looks were too refined or feminine by martial standards were often viewed with suspicion. Their beauty was seen as a sign of weakness, a lack of manly virtue. Yang Dang. They were considered distracting, and in the hyper-masculine world of the military and government, this made them liabilities. One day, you overhear a senior commander berating Wei. The commander isn't yelling about a mistake Wei made or a dereliction of duty. He's yelling about his face. Do you think you're an actor on a stage? The commander snarls. Wipe that look off your face. A soldier should look like a tiger, not a plucked flower. Wei stands perfectly still, his expression unreadable, taking the verbal abuse without a word. In that moment, you see a reflection of your own predicament. He too, is trapped by his appearance, his worth and character judged solely on the aesthetics of his features. Here's a peculiar and telling historical anecdote about this. One of the most famous, beautiful men in Chinese history was a scholar general named Pan An. He was so handsome that whenever he rode his carriage through the capital, women would throw fruit into it to show their admiration. It sounds charming, but this reputation followed him throughout his career. His political enemies often used his good looks to subtly undermine him, implying he was frivolous and not to be taken seriously as a statesman. His beauty became both his claim to fame and a permanent asterisk next to his name. Wei's situation is more precarious. He doesn't have the protection of high rank. You learn that he was promoted to the Imperial Guard, not because of exceptional skill, but because a powerful prince saw him and was impressed by his appearance, treating him like a decorative item for his personal retinue. This favor from the prince, much like the emperor's favor for you, made him a target. The other guards resent him for his unearned position. They see him as a pet, not a peer. You watch as he becomes more and more isolated. He eats alone. He practices his sword forms in a deserted corner of the training grounds. His movements fluid and precise, but tinged with a deep-seated loneliness. His beauty has placed him in a kind of no man's land. He doesn't fit in with the rough world of the soldiers, and his station as a mere guard prevents him from being part of the refined world of the nobility. Historians and sociologists still debate the complex role of male beauty in different cultures and time periods. In the West, male beauty is often tied to rugged, powerful archetypes. In many East Asian cultures, however, there has historically been a greater appreciation for a more refined, androgynous, or flower-like male beauty. But this appreciation was often confined to the arts and literature. In the rigid, hierarchical worlds of the military and government, it was often a dangerous trait. Was this a form of aesthetic appreciation, or a subtle means of social control, marginalizing those who didn't fit the dominant masculine ideal? The argument continues. Seeing Wei's silent struggle gives you a strange sense of solace. Your curse is not yours alone. The prison of beauty has inmates of all genders. It makes you realize that the problem is not your face, or his. The problem is a world that is too quick to turn a person into a symbol, an object, a story. It robs you of your humanity, reducing you to a single, defining, and inescapable trait. As you watch Wei from your window, a solitary, beautiful statue guarding a gate to nowhere, you understand a profound truth: to be too pretty in this world is to be fundamentally misunderstood. In the quiet solitude of your political exile, you turn to the only companions who won't betray you: your books and scrolls. You read voraciously history, philosophy, and especially poetry. It is in the flowing ink of long-dead poets that you find a strange and unsettling form of immortality. Your story, or a version of it, is already being written. One day, Mr. Peng brings you a new scroll, a gift from a distant relative who still dares to associate with you. It's a collection of poems by a rising young talent in the capital. As you unroll the delicate paper, your eyes fall upon a title that makes your blood run cold. A lament for the luminous concubine. The poem is beautiful. It is a masterpiece of elegant language and evocative imagery. It speaks of a beauty that could make the fish forget to swim and the geese forget to fly. It describes your grace, your skill with the zither, the way the emperor was captivated by your smile. It paints you as a tragic, romantic figure, a flawless gem brought into the dusty world, only to be misunderstood and cast aside. It is deeply sympathetic, and you hate it. You hate it because it is a lie. It's a beautiful, perfectly crafted cage of words that confines you just as surely as the palace walls do. The poet, who has never met you, who knows nothing of your life in the village, your fears, or your thoughts, has created a fictional version of you. He has turned your life into a neat, tragic story for others to consume. He praises your beauty, but in doing so, he erases your humanity. You are not a person in his poem, you are a metaphor for lost love, for political folly, for the transient nature of beauty. This was a common fate for famous palace women. Their lives became raw material for the literary imagination. Poets, playwrights, and historians would seize upon their stories, embellishing them, moralizing them, and freezing them in time. The real woman, with all her complexities and contradictions, would disappear, replaced by a literary archetype. Yangji Uifei, the famous consort of the Tang Dynasty, is perhaps the ultimate example. Was she a manipulative political actor or a tragic lover? The historical person is almost impossible to find beneath the mountain of poems, plays, and legends written about her. You are watching this process happen to you in real time. The poem is a hit. You hear from your maids that it is being recited in the wine houses and sung by courtesans in the pleasure quarters. Your name is once again on everyone's lips, but you are more of a ghost now than ever before. You have become a character in a story that you have no control over. Here's a bizarre and frustrating aspect of this phenomenon. The official version becomes the true version. Centuries from now, when historians try to understand your life, this poem will be a primary source. Your actual thoughts, your lived experience, will be gone, lost to time. What will remain is this elegant, romantic, and utterly false portrait. It's a form of identity theft on a grand, historical scale. You have become a prisoner of someone else's art. This raises a question that academics who study pre-modern sources grapple with constantly. How do we separate historical fact from literary fiction when a court historian writes about a consort? Is he recording history, or is he participating in a political act, using her story to praise or condemn a ruler? When a poet writes a lament, is he expressing genuine sympathy, or is he using a popular trope to showcase his own literary skill? There is no easy answer. History, especially the history of women who left no records of their own, is often a matter of reading between the lines of texts written by men with their own agendas. You, of course, cannot write a rebuttal. You cannot hold a press conference to correct the record. A woman of your station, especially one in disgrace, has no public voice. Your silence is taken as assent. You are trapped. The more famous the poem becomes, the more the real you fades away. You reread the poem, your fingers tracing the elegant characters. Her smile, 1,000 ounces of gold. One line reads, it's a famous cliché, meant to be the highest of compliments. But to you, it feels like an invoice. It reduces your emotions to a transaction, your happiness to a commodity. The poet thinks he is praising you, but he is just reinforcing the original problem. He is still defining you by your value to men, by the effect your beauty has on the world, rather than by your own inner life. You roll up the scroll, a bitter taste in your mouth. You have achieved a kind of immortality, the kind every emperor craves. Your name might be remembered for centuries, but it will be a hollow fame. They will remember the luminous concubine, the tragic beauty, the poet's muse. They will never know the girl who loved the smell of damp earth after a rainstorm, who knew how to mend a fishing net, and who now sits alone in a silent room, a prisoner of her own legend. The years begin to bleed into one another, marked only by the changing seasons in your small, walled garden. The political storm that once raged around you has passed, leaving behind a quiet, stagnant calm. You are no longer in disgrace, but you are not in favor either. You exist in a state of polite, royal neglect, a ghost in the machine. The emperor has new favorites now, young, vibrant girls who laugh a little too loudly and wear the latest fashions. You see them sometimes from a distance, like bright, exotic birds flitting through the courtyards. There is no bitterness in you, only a profound, weary sense of resignation. You have been where they are. You know the exhilarating, terrifying view from the top of the tightrope, and you know the sickening lurch when you start to lose your balance. Your life becomes a performance of contentment. Your primary duty now is to be invisible, to cause no trouble, to be a model of quiet dignity. Every morning, you rise, dress in simple but elegant robes, and manage your small household of servants. You practice your calligraphy, your brush strokes becoming more confident and fluid with each passing year. You tend to your garden, finding a simple, grounding pleasure in the feel of soil under your fingernails. You play your zither, not for an audience, but for yourself, the sound, beautiful melodies filling the silence of your courtyard. You have perfected the art of the serene smile. It is your shield and your mast. You smile when you greet the eunuchs. You smile when you pay your respects at the empress's court. You smile when you hear news of a rival's promotion or another's downfall. The smile is a blank wall, betraying nothing of the roiling emotions behind it, the loneliness, the boredom, the flickering embers of a spirit that refuses to be completely extinguished. This constant emotional labor was the unspoken, full-time job of a palace woman. To display negative emotions, anger, jealousy, sadness was a sign of poor breeding and a lack of self-control. It was a strategic error that could be used against you. The ideal consort was a placid, decorative object, always pleasant, always graceful. The pressure to maintain this facade, day after day, year after year, was immense. Here's a small, sad detail about this life: the illness excuse. A common and accepted way for a consort to deal with overwhelming stress, or to avoid a difficult political situation, was to feign illness. You would confine yourself to your bedchambers, refuse visitors, and have your physicians report that you were suffering from a malaise or a disturbance of the vital humors. It was one of the few socially acceptable ways to retreat from the world without causing a scandal. It was a cry for help disguised as a physical ailment. You find yourself using this excuse more and more often, simply to buy yourself a few days of peace from the relentless demand to perform happiness. You become a keen observer of palace life, a silent anthropologist in this strange, gilded tribe. You watch the endless cycles of power. You see ambitious young women rise and fall like fireworks, burning brightly for a moment before vanishing into the dark. You see the eunuchs subtly shift their alliances. You see the empress, aging and ever watchful, maintaining her grip on the inner court with quiet, ruthless efficiency. You realize that the palace is a closed system, a world with its own peculiar laws of physics. Here, time moves differently. The future is an unknowable fog, and the past is a constant, looming presence. Grudges from a decade ago are nursed and kept warm. Favors are remembered and eventually called in. Your own story, the flood, the censor's memorial, the poet's lament, is now just another layer in the palace's thick, sedimentary history. Historians often debate the agency of these cloistered women. Were they simply passive victims of a patriarchal system, beautiful pawns in a game played by men, or did they find ways to exercise their own power, to carve out spaces for themselves, to resist in subtle, often invisible ways? Some scholars argue that by mastering the rules of the system, women like the Empress wielded enormous indirect power. Others suggest that acts of resistance, like feigning illness, writing melancholy poetry, or forming close female friendships, were their only way of asserting their humanity. For you, it's not a matter of theory, it's a daily practice. Your survival is your resistance, your sanity is your victory. One afternoon, the young, newly favored concubine, full of youthful arrogance, makes a snide remark about your somber robes during a formal gathering. A few years ago, the comment might have stung. Now, you simply look at her, your face a mask of serene placidity, and offer her a small, perfect smile. The smile says nothing and everything. It says, I was you once. It says, you will be me one day. It says, I have survived things you cannot yet imagine. The young concubine, unnerved by your unshakable calm, looks away, flustered. In the silent, brutal game of the inner court, you have just won a small victory. Without saying a word, the price of that victory is the vast, echoing emptiness inside you that the smile is designed to hide. In the slow, unchanging rhythm of your life, a sudden, sharp note of discord rings out. The news arrives, as it always does, through the palace grapevine, carried on the hushed whispers of maids and eunuchs. Noble consort Yan, the woman who had been a quiet, powerful rival for years, has fallen. It happens with breathtaking speed. Her brother, the military commander whose promotion you had noted with caution years ago, is accused of plotting a rebellion. Whether the charge is true or just a fabrication by his political enemies, it doesn't matter. The verdict is swift. He is arrested, stripped of his rank, and his entire family is implicated. Guilt by association is the law of the land. And so, the storm breaks over noble consort Yan. She is a powerful, respected figure, a woman who has navigated the treacherous currents of the court for 2 decades. She has the emperor's respect, if not his passion, but the accusation against her family is a stain that cannot be washed away. Her connection to a traitor makes her a political liability. The emperor, with what is described in the official decree as a heavy heart, strips her of her title and all her privileges. She is moved from her grand palace to a small, isolated courtyard in the northernmost corner of the Forbidden City, an area known grimly as the Cold Palace. The Cold Palace isn't a specific, single building. It's a term for any number of dilapidated, remote courtyards used to house disgraced consorts. It is a place of ultimate exile, a prison within the prison. To be sent, there is a social and political death sentence. You are erased from court life. Your name is struck from the official records. You are given the barest of rations, attended by only 1 or 2 elderly servants, and left to live out your days in solitude and shame. Out of a mixture of morbid curiosity and a strange, chilling sense of empathy, you find a way to see her. You bribe a young eunuch, who delivers supplies to that desolate corner of the city. One gray, drizzly afternoon, he leads you down a series of forgotten, weed-choked pathways. The air grows damp and cold. He points to a small, dilapidated gate with peeling red paint. She is in there, he whispers, before scurrying away. You peer through a crack in the gate. The courtyard inside is bleak and overgrown. Weeds sprout between the paving stones. In the center of the yard, a woman is on her hands and knees, scrubbing laundry in a wooden tub. Her back is to you. She is wearing the coarse, gray robes of a common servant. Here, once styled in elaborate coiffure as held by jeweled pins, is now simply tied in a loose, untidy knot. Then she turns, perhaps sensing your presence, and you see her face. It is noble consort Yan, but it is a version of her you barely recognize. The serene, proud mask of the high-ranking consort is gone, shattered. Her face is bare of makeup. revealing the lines of worry and age. Her hands are red and dry from the harsh soap, but the most shocking change is in her eyes. The cool, intelligent gaze you remember is gone, replaced by a look of utter, hollow despair. She looks at the gate, but her eyes don't seem to register you. They are focused on a past she can no longer reclaim. Here is a bizarre and cruel detail about life in the cold palace: the food. The rations sent to these disgraced women were often deliberately terrible. They might receive moldy rice, wilted vegetables, or scraps of meat deemed unfit for anyone else. It was a constant, daily reminder of their fallen status. Some stories even tell of eunuchs, holding grudges from the woman's time in power, who would spit in the food before delivering it. It was a system designed not just to isolate, but to humiliate and break the spirit. Watching her, a cold dread washes over you. This woman was your superior, your rival. She was clever, connected, and a master of the palace game. If she could fall this far, this fast, then no one is safe. Your own comfortable obscurity is not a fortress, it is a temporary truce. A ceasefire that could be broken at any moment. Historians struggle to document the fates of women sent to the cold palace. By their very nature, they were meant to be forgotten. Their names vanish from the records. Their existence becomes a ghost story, a cautionary tale whispered to new arrivals. Did they all live out their days in misery? Some scholars, piecing together fragments of evidence, suggest that some found ways to survive, forming small communities of fellow exiles, finding solace in Buddhist chanting, or simply enduring through sheer force of will. But for most, it was a slow, lonely descent into madness or oblivion. You step back from the gate, your heart pounding. The sight of the once proud consort, now a broken scullery maid, is a more powerful lesson than any book or poem. It is a visceral, terrifying reminder of the fundamental rule of this world: your beauty, your rank, your intelligence, your favor. All of it is borrowed. It is granted by one man, and it can be taken away in an instant, leaving you with nothing but a gray robe and a tub of cold, dirty water. Our today could have been your yesterday, and it could still be your tomorrow. Years continue to pass, layering over the palace like fine dust. The emperor, once a vigorous man in the prime of his life, is now visibly aging. His hair is thinner, streaked with silver. His steps are slower, his shoulders stooped by the invisible weight of the dragon throne. The fatigue you saw in his eyes on that first night has now settled deep into his bones. His personality begins to change. The decisive, often ruthless, ruler is replaced by a man who is increasingly unpredictable. He becomes more susceptible to flattery, more paranoid about conspiracies, and more interested in the promises of alchemists than the reports of his ministers. He begins a quest for the elixir of life, a common obsession for aging emperors throughout Chinese history. He invites Taoist mystics and charismatic charlatans to the palace. They promise him immortality through concoctions of rare herbs, powdered minerals, and, most dangerously, heavy metals like mercury and lead. The court slowly splinters into factions. One group, led by the crown prince and his allies among the Confucian scholar officials, quietly despairs at the emperor's eccentricities. They try to steer him back towards responsible governance, but their cautious advice is often ignored. Another group, a collection of opportunistic nobles and powerful eunuchs, encourages the emperor's new obsessions. They see his declining judgment as an opportunity to seize more power for themselves. You watch this slow decay from your quiet corner of the palace. The emperor's visits to the inner court become rare and erratic. When he does appear, he is often distant, his mind elsewhere. The vibrant, competitive world of the concubines begins to feel like a forgotten theater, its lead actor having lost interest in the play. The empress, ever the pragmatist, focuses her energy on securing the position of her son, the crown prince. She becomes a formidable political operator, forming alliances and subtly maneuvering against the eunuch faction. The inner court, once a battlefield of romantic favor, is now a shadow theater of raw political ambition. Your own survival now depends less on being beautiful and more on being politically invisible. Here's a truly strange and dangerous aspect of this period: the immortality pills. The elixirs the emperor was consuming were oft little more than poison. Many of these concoctions contained cinnabar, mercury sulfide, and other toxic substances. The belief was that these powerful minerals, when consumed in the right way, could purify the body and grant eternal life. In reality, they caused mercury poisoning, leading to neurological damage, paranoia, erratic behavior, and, eventually, death. The very thing he took to extend his life was, in fact, an expensive, ritualized form of suicide. The emperor's growing paranoia has a chilling effect on the palace. Accusations of witchcraft and black magic become more common. A consort who falls ill might be accused by a rival of being the victim of a curse. A strange omen, like a withered tree in a courtyard, could be interpreted as a sign of treasonous intent. The atmosphere grows thick with fear and suspicion. It's a classic sign of a dynasty in decline when the center weakens. The edges begin to fray, and superstition rushes in to fill the vacuum left by rational authority. One day, you see the emperor shuffling through a garden, leaning heavily on the arm of his chief eunuch. He stops to look at a flowering plum tree. For a moment, his eyes seem to clear, and a flicker of the man he once was returns. He turns and his gaze sweeps across the courtyard, passing over you without recognition. His eyes are clouded, vacant. He is a ghost haunting his own life. This slow decline of a ruler is a subject that historians find both fascinating and difficult to piece together. Official court records would never state that the Son of Heaven was losing his mind or being poisoned by his own doctors. The histories would speak in euphemisms, mentioning the emperor's ill health or his retreat into spiritual cultivation. Scholars have to become detectives, cross-referencing official annals with unofficial histories, medical texts, and records of court appointments to reconstruct what was really happening. Was the emperor's decline a natural process of aging, or was it accelerated by the medicines he was taking? The evidence strongly suggests the latter. A tragic, self-inflicted decline. The entire palace seems to be holding its breath. Everyone knows the emperor is fading, that no one can say it aloud. The power vacuum he is creating is pulling the court apart. The factions circle each other warily, like wolves waiting for the old pack leader to finally fall. The stability of the entire empire rests on the flickering heartbeat of one aging, tired man. You feel a strange, detached pity for him. He is the most powerful man in the world, the lord of 10,000 years. Yet he is as helpless against the ravages of time as the lowliest farmer in your old village. His pursuit of immortality has only hastened his demise. You look at him, a frail old man lost in a garden, and you realize that his gilded cage is, in the end, just as inescapable as yours. The dragon throne is the loneliest place of all. The first crack in the empire appears not as a tremor from the throne, but as a deep rumble from the earth itself. A massive earthquake strikes a distant province, followed by a prolonged drought that turns the fields to dust. The mandate of heaven narrative, which had once been a political tool used against you, now returns with a vengeance, this time directed at the entire court. In the capital, the whispers that once haunted the palace corridors now spill out into the city streets. In the teahouses and marketplaces, people begin to connect the dots, creating a narrative of cosmic displeasure. The heavens are angry. The proof is everywhere: the earthquake, the drought, and the emperor's bizarre behavior, which, despite the court's best efforts, has become the subject of wild rumors. People whisper that the Son of Heaven has secluded himself with mystics, neglecting the administration of the empire. And, inevitably, the old stories about you and other bewitching beauties are resurrected. The tale of the flood from years ago is retold, now linked to this new wave of disasters. You, even in your quiet obscurity, are woven back into the tapestry of blame. You become part of a larger pattern of moral decay. The storytellers say that the emperor's obsession with pretty faces in his youth was the first sign of his weakness, the first crack that allowed misfortune to seep into the realm. Your past crime is no longer a specific event, it's the origin story for the present chaos. The government, weakened by factional infighting under distracted ruler, responds ineptly to the disasters. Relief grain is slow to arrive in the drought-stricken areas, partly due to corruption, as local officials siphon off supplies. Taxes remain high as the court continues to fund the emperor's expensive search for immortality. Resentment among the common people begins to simmer, turning into open anger. This connection between natural disasters and political legitimacy is a cornerstone of Chinese political philosophy. It wasn't just a folk superstition, it was a deeply held belief by scholars and commoners alike. The emperor was seen as the intermediary between heaven, earth, and humanity. If he ruled with virtue and wisdom, the cosmos would be in harmony, resulting in good harvests and social stability. If he was corrupt or neglectful, heaven would show its displeasure through floods, droughts, earthquakes, and even celestial phenomena like comets or eclipses. You see the effects of the growing unrest even within the palace walls. The quality of the food declines slightly. The silks are not as fine. The atmosphere is tense, fearful. The guards at the gates are more numerous, their faces grim. The forbidden city, once the unshakable center of the world, begins to feel like a fortress under siege. Here's a small but telling detail about how this anxiety manifested the obsession with omens. In times of uncertainty, the court became fixated on interpreting signs. Data-headed lamb born in a province, a strange cloud formation, a flock of birds flying in an unusual pattern. All of it was reported to the court and intensely debated by the imperial astrologers. Every event was scoured for meaning, a desperate attempt to read the future and understand the will of the heavens. It was a society gripped by a kind of collective anxiety, constantly looking for validation or condemnation from the cosmos. The simmering resentment in the provinces finally boils over. A charismatic peasant leader, claiming he has a mandate from heaven to overthrow the corrupt dynasty, starts a rebellion. It begins small, in a remote, mountainous region, but it spreads like a grass fire on a dry plain. Dispossessed farmers, starving families, and disgruntled local gentry flock to his banner. He promises them food, land, and an end to the corrupt rule of the eunuchs and decadent nobles. The news of the rebellion sends a shockwave through the capital. At first, the court dismisses it as a minor outbreak of banditry. They dispatch a small, poorly equipped army to deal with it. But the army is defeated. The rebels, fighting with the ferocity of desperate men, are better organized and more motivated than the imperial troops. Historians often debate the tipping point for these major peasant rebellions. Was it a single event, like a natural disaster, or was it the culmination of decades of slow-burning problems, land inequality, official corruption, and a loss of faith in the central government? The consensus is that it's rarely one thing. It's usually a perfect storm, where long-term systemic failures are ignited by a short-term crisis. The beautiful women, the palace intrigues, the emperor's eccentricities, they weren't the direct cause, but they were powerful symbols of the rot at the core of the dynasty, symbols that rebel leaders used masterfully in their propaganda to justify their uprising. You sit in your courtyard and listen to the rumors of the spreading rebellion. You hear the names of towns and cities, places you passed through on your long journey to the capital all those years ago that have now fallen to the rebel army. The distant, abstract problem of unrest is getting closer. The cracks in the empire are widening, and you can feel the ground beneath your feet beginning to tremble. The gilded cage, which has been your entire world, is starting to look terrifyingly fragile. As the rebellion gains momentum, the political battles within the outer court reach a fever pitch. The ministers and officials, terrified of the approaching rebel army, are desperate to find a solution, or at least to avoid being blamed for the failure. The factionalism that had been simmering for years now erupts into open warfare, fought with ink brushes and whispered accusations instead of swords. Then you, once again, find yourself becoming a weapon. The scholar officials, the faction led by the Crown Prince's supporters, need to explain the military disasters without blaming the prince or appearing disloyal to the ailing emperor. They fall back on the oldest trick in the book. They begin to craft a narrative that the emperor's judgment has been clouded for years, not by his own failings, but by the nefarious influences within the palace. Their primary targets are the powerful eunuchs, their longtime rivals. But to make the argument stick, they need more than just political accusations. They need a moral argument. They need to paint a picture of a court steeped in decadence and vice. So, they start to talk about you. In their memorials to the throne and in their calculated leaks to the city's intellectual circles, they resurrect your story. They remind everyone of the luminous concubine, the girl whose beauty captivated the emperor and coincided with the first signs of dynastic trouble. You are no longer just a fox spirit, you are now exhibite in their case against the moral decay of the inner court. An official will stand before the emperor and deliver a long, eloquent speech about the need for military reform. And then, he will add a subtle, cutting line: how can we expect the soldiers to be brave when the palace itself has been weakened by indulgent distractions? For so long another will argue for raising taxes to fund the army, and then lament that the treasury has been squandered on pearls and peacocks. They don't have to name you. Your story has become a well-known metaphor, a piece of political shorthand. This tactic is as brilliant as it is cruel. It allows them to criticize the emperor's past behavior without being overtly treasonous. They aren't saying, "You made bad decisions." They are saying, "You were led astray by these corrupting influences." It's a way of attacking the king by attacking his favorites. A classic move in the playbook of court politics around the world. You hear about these speeches and memorials from Mr. Ming, who is now nervous and increasingly fatalistic. The attacks on the inner court are attacks on his world. Too, he tells you how your name is used as a veiled threat, a warning to the emperor's current favorites, a way for the bureaucracy to assert its moral superiority over the personal. Here's a bizarre but revealing aspect of this political theater: the use of historical analogy. Officials would never dare to criticize the current situation directly. Instead, they would write a long essay about the fall of a previous dynasty, hundreds of years earlier. They would describe in vivid detail how that long-dead emperor was bewitched by a beautiful consort, how he listened to corrupt eunuchs, neglected his duties, and lost the mandate of heaven. The parallels to the current situation would be obvious to everyone, but the writer maintained plausible deniability. He was just a humble historian, offering lessons from the past. It was a sophisticated and highly dangerous game of political allegory. The debate among historians about this is endless. To what extent did the harem and the eunuchs really influence major state policy? The Confucian historians who wrote the official records would have you believe their influence was enormous and almost always disastrous. They present a simple, moralistic narrative when the emperor stays in the outer court and listens to his wise, bearded male advisors. The empire is strong when he retreats into the inner court and listens to women and eunuchs. The empire weakens. Modern scholars are far more skeptical. They argue that this is a simplistic and deeply biased narrative. It ignores complex economic and social factors and instead places the blame for systemic failure on a convenient internal other. The inner court becomes a scapegoat for the failures of the entire ruling class. For you, the academic debate is meaningless. The reality is that your name is being dragged through the mud. Your very existence has been weaponized by people you will never meet in a battle for power that has nothing to do with you. You are a ghost, a symbol, a cautionary tale. You are a tool used by one group of powerful men against another. You sit in your garden, pruning a rose bush, the thorns catching on your sleeve. You feel a sudden, sharp anger, a feeling you haven't allowed yourself to experience in years. They have taken your youth, your freedom, and your name. They have turned you into a caricature, a footnote in their grand, self-serving histories. You have been silent for so long, a model of placid obedience. But as the sound of distant, panicked bells begins to echo through the city, a sign that the rebels are getting closer, a desperate, reckless thought begins to form in your mind. What if you refuse to be silent any longer? The reckless thought solidifies into a desperate plan. You have been a silent pawn for too long. You have watched the empire crumble from your gilded cage, your name used as an excuse for the failures of powerful men. Perhaps, just perhaps, if you could speak to the emperor, you could make him understand. You could cut through the layers of deceit spun by the factions around him. It is a foolish, naive hope, but it's the only one you have left. Getting an audience with the emperor is now nearly impossible. He is secluded, protected by a wall of paranoid eunuchs who guard access to him like dragons hoarding treasure. But you have one advantage: you are a ghost. You are so far from the center of power that no one pays you any attention. You are not a threat, and you still have Mr. Peng, whose loyalty, cultivated over years of quiet respect and shared obscurity, is now your only asset. With a significant portion of your remaining jewelry as a bribe, Mr. Peng orchestrates a meeting. It's not a formal audience. It's an accidental encounter. He learns that the emperor, in a rare moment of lucidity, plans to take a short walk in a secluded garden, a garden that happens to be near your own. You wait for him, your heart a frantic drum against your ribs. You have rehearsed what you will say 100 times. You will not be the luminous concubine. You will not be the demure, pleasing ornament. You will be the girl from the village, speaking plain, honest truth. When he appears, he is even more frail than you remembered. He is leaning heavily onto young eunuchs, his imperial yellow robes hanging loosely on his skeletal frame. His eyes are milky and unfocused. You step out from behind an gnarled pine tree and kneel before him. "Your Majesty," you say, your voice clear and steady, startling his attendants. He blinks, his eyes struggling to focus on you. For a moment, you see a flicker of recognition, a ghost of the man who once gifted you a white peacock. "Luminous," he whispers, his voice a dry rasp. "This is your chance." You speak quickly, passionately. You tell him that his ministers are lying to him, that they are using the rebellion as an excuse to fight their own petty battles. You tell him the people are not angry at him, but at the corrupt officials who steal their grain. You tell him he is being poisoned, not by black magic, but by the elixirs of immortality given to him by the charlatans he trusts. You urge him to trust his son, the crown prince, and to rally the court before it is too late. You are, in essence, committing political suicide. What you are doing is known as Hugongans and the harem interfering in politics. It is one of the most cardinal sins a consort could commit. The inner court and the outer court were meant to be two separate worlds. For a woman to offer political advice was seen as a catastrophic breach of protocol, an unnatural and dangerous usurpation of the male role of governance. The emperor stares at you, his expression shifting from confusion to a flash of anger, which then dissolves back into a cloudy bewilderment. He doesn't seem to have fully understood your words, but his chief eunuch, a sly, powerful man who is a bitter rival of Mr. Peng, has understood perfectly. His eyes narrow with cold fury. He sees your desperate plea not as an act of loyalty, but as a dangerous move in the palace power game, an attempt by the crown prince's faction to use a forgotten consort to get to the emperor. He steps forward. "Your Majesty, the concubine is unwell," he says in a smooth, oily voice. Her humors are disturbed. She speaks nonsense out of fever and female anxiety. He signals to the guards. "Escort her back to her quarters. She is not to leave them again." Your desperate gamble has failed. You are dragged away, not even as a political prisoner, but as a hysterical woman. The incident is recorded in the court annals, but not as you experienced it. The official record, likely dictated by the chief eunuch, will state that the concubine Luminous, in a fit of madness, accosted the emperor with wild and treasonous talk, proving the dangers of female influence on matters of state. This is a classic historical trap, and one that historians constantly fall into. The official records are presented as objective fact, but they are often deeply biased narratives, crafted to support a particular political agenda. How many mad or hysterical women in history were simply women who tried to speak up and were silenced by having their sanity questioned, we can never truly know. The accusation of madness is the ultimate tool of patriarchal dismissal. As you are locked in your room, the last of your hope drains away. You didn't just fail to save the kingdom, you have made things worse. You have confirmed every negative stereotype about women in power. You have handed your enemies and the enemies of the crown prince a perfect weapon. You will now be held up as the prime example of why women must be kept beautiful, silent, and safely confined to their gilded cages. Your one attempt to be a person has resulted in you becoming the ultimate symbol of the disruptive woman. Your voice, which you tried to use for truth, will now be used as evidence in a lie that will be told for centuries. The end comes faster than anyone expected. The rebel army, swollen with new recruits and hardened by a string of victories, sweeps across the northern plains. The imperial armies, demoralized, cruelly led, and plagued by defections, crumble before them. City after city falls. The reports reaching the capital become more and more frantic. The rebellion is no longer a distant problem in the provinces. It is a horde, a tidal wave of anger and steel, crashing towards the gates of the forbidden city itself. Panic grips the capital. The wealthy and powerful, who just weeks ago were bickering over titles and territories, now think only of escape. Convoys of carriages loaded with gold, silks, and fleeing officials clog the roads leading south. The price of a horse skyrockets. The city, once the proud heart of the empire, is consumed by a collective, primal fear. Inside the palace, the illusion of divine order shatters completely. The rigid etiquette that governed every moment of your life dissolves into chaos. Servants abandon their posts, helping themselves to treasures from the storehouses. Eunuchs, who once held the power of life and death through subtle protocol, now scurry about, their faces pale with terror, trying to find a way to save their own skins. The emperor, finally jolted from his mercury-induced haze by the sheer proximity of the danger, is a broken man. The Son of Heaven is now just a terrified old man, trapped by a disaster of his own making. A council is held. The debate is no longer about how to defeat the rebels, but how to flee. The decision is made. The emperor, along with the empress, the crown prince, and a small, essential retinue, will abandon the capital and escape to the south, hoping to regroup and rally loyalist forces there. You are included in the escape party, not out of any lingering affection, but for a cold, practical reason. Your recent mad attempt to advise the emperor has made you notorious. The chief eunuch, seeking to further discredit the crown prince's faction, insists that you be brought along. Your presence is a living symbol of the decadence that, in his telling, caused this mess. You are a piece of evidence he needs for the political battles to come. The night of the escape is a scene of surreal desperation. There is no imperial procession, no golden carriages, just a small, frantic group of people gathered in a dark courtyard, dressed in common clothes as a disguise. The emperor is bundled into an ox cart, hidden beneath rough blankets. The empress and the crown prince are on horseback, their faces grim. You are given a donkey. The air is filled with the sounds of chaos from beyond the palace walls, shouting, the splintering of wood as looters break into shops, and the distant, terrifying tolling of alarm bells. You look back at the golden-roofed pavilions, silhouetted against a sky turned red by fires in the city, the forbidden city, the place that has been your home, your prison, and your entire world for your adult life, now looks like a giant, ornate tomb. Here's a small, poignant detail common to accounts of dynastic collapses. the fate of the palace pets, the lapdogs, the caged songbirds, the exotic animals in the imperial menagerie all are left behind. In the chaos of human survival, these small, living symbols of a life of luxury are forgotten, left to starve or be killed by the invading forces. It's a minor footnote in a grand tragedy, but it speaks volumes about the complete and sudden disintegration of a world. You join the small, pathetic convoy as it slips out of a northern gate of the palace, a gate usually reserved for servants on deliveries. The guards have fled. The city outside is a nightmare. The streets are filled with panicked crowds and lawless soldiers. You huddle on your donkey, pulling your cloak over your face, trying to be invisible. The beautiful face that started this whole journey is now a liability that could get you killed. The question of why some imperial capitals were so easily abandoned has long been debated by historians. Was it a failure of military strategy, a collapse of morale, or was it a psychological failure? A belief that the physical city was less important than the person of the emperor. Some argue that the concept of capital was more fluid, that as long as the emperor was alive, the dynasty existed, no matter where he was. But for the people left behind, the abandonment was a total betrayal. As your small, desperate group clears the city gates and heads into the dark, uncertain countryside, you look back one last time. The city is burning. The world you knew is gone, consumed by flames. The intricate rules, the silent power plays, the competition, the favor, the disgrace, all of it has been rendered meaningless in a single night. Your gilded cage has been broken open, but you haven't been set free. You've just been thrown into a much larger, more dangerous wilderness. The journey south is a brutal awakening. The meticulously maintained roads of the empire are now choked with refugees, a river of human misery flowing away from the advancing rebel army. You see things you haven't seen since you were a child in your village, and things you have never imagined. You see starvation etched on the faces of children, despair in the eyes of old men, and a rough, desperate fear in everyone. Your small, disguised royal party is just another drop in this sorrowful ocean. The ox cart carrying the emperor constantly gets stuck in the mud. The horses are weak from lack of proper fodder. The fine silks and imperial robes have been traded for the coarse, dirt-stained clothes of peasants. The grime on your face and the dust in your hair are a better disguise than any mask. For the first time in years, no one looks at you twice. Your beauty is buried under a layer of filth and exhaustion. And in this new world, that is a blessing. The nights are the worst. You huddle together for warmth in abandoned temples or deserted farmhouses, sleeping on cold stone floors. The silence of the countryside is filled with unfamiliar and terrifying sounds: the howl of wolves, the rustle of unseen things in the undergrowth, and sometimes the distant screams of a village being raided. The emperor, in his rare moments of lucidity, weeps. The empress maintains a stoic silence, her face a mask of iron will. The crown prince, now the de facto leader of this pathetic band, does his best to keep everyone moving, his youthful face aged by a decade in as many days. You learn to be practical. You learn to forage for wild vegetables, to start a fire with flint and steel, to sleep with one ear open. The soft, useless hands of a court lady become calloused. The girl from the village, the one who knew how to survive, begins to resurface from the deep tomb where the luminous concubine had buried her. You are no longer an ornament, you are a survivor. This kind of flight of the imperial court is a recurring theme in Chinese history. The details are always different, but the core elements are the same: the abandonment of the capital, the difficult journey, the reliance on loyal provincial governors, and the immense suffering of the common people caught in the middle. These journeys were symbolic moments of dynastic failure, stripping away the divine aura of the Son of Heaven and revealing the vulnerable human underneath. One afternoon, your party is stopped by a patrol of local militia loyal to a regional warlord. They are rough, suspicious men. They don't recognize the emperor. but they see a group of well-fed people with good horses, which makes them a target. The captain of the royal guard, a man who once stood like the statue in gleaming armor, now has to humble himself, bowing and scraping, offering them a bag of silver to let you pass. It's a humiliating, terrifying moment. The absolute power of the throne has vanished. Out here, the only law is the sword. Here's a bizarre and fascinating detail about survival in these chaotic times. Currency. In a collapsed economy, the official copper coins became almost worthless. What became valuable? Salt, grain, and silk. A bolt of plain silk could be used to barter for food, lodging, or safe passage. It was a portable, high-value commodity. Your maids, in their last moments in the palace, had the foresight to wrap their belongings in bolts of silk instead of cloth sacks. That silk is now what is keeping you all alive, traded piece by piece for bowls of watery soup and a safe place to sleep. The historical debate around these periods of chaos often centers on the concept of loyalty. Why did some officials or generals remain loyal to a clearly failing dynasty, while others switched their allegiance to the rebels or declared themselves independent warlords? It was a complex calculation of personal honor, family ties, regional identity, and a pragmatic assessment of who was most likely to win. The empire wasn't a monolithic entity, it was a patchwork of interests, and in a crisis, that patchwork ripped apart at the seams. For you, the journey is a long, painful process of deprogramming. Everything you were taught in the palace of gathered delegates, how to walk, how to talk, how to be beautiful, is now useless. Worse than useless. It's dangerous. You learn to hunch your shoulders, to avoid eye contact, to make yourself small and unattainable. You look at the other members of your party. The empress, who once ruled a court of thousands, now has to bargain for a cup of clean water. The chief eunuch, whose whispers could topple ministers, is now just another terrified old man. The golden cage of the Forbidden City has been swapped for the vast, open prison of a collapsed state. The titles, the ranks, the rituals, all of it was a fragile illusion, a play that you all performed. Now the theater has burned down, and you are all just actors, stripped of your costumes, blinking in the harsh, unforgiving light of reality. After weeks of grueling travel, your small, ragged group of fugitives reaches a military outpost called Maui Slope. It's little more than a collection of dusty tents and makeshift barracks, but it's the headquarters of the main imperial army that managed to retreat from the capital in some semblance of order. Here, you expect to find safety, rest, and a chance to regroup. Instead, you find a mutiny. The soldiers are angry, they are tired, they are hungry, and they have just lost their homes and families in the capital. They need someone to blame. They look at the pathetic, shell-shocked figure of the emperor, and they see the root of their problems. They look at the crown prince, and they see a weak successor. They look at the high-ranking eunuchs, and they see the corrupt officials who whispered poison into the emperor's ear. Their simmering resentment, fueled by days of retreat and defeat, boils over. The soldiers surround the hut where the emperor is resting. They are not a disorganized mob, they are a disciplined, armed force, and their message is clear. They refuse to go any further. They refuse to fight for this broken court until the traitors who caused this disaster are punished. Their first target is the powerful chief eunuch, your old nemesis. They drag him out of his tent, ignoring his pleas and protests. The charges are read aloud: corruption, deceiving the emperor, causing the rebellion. The verdict is instantaneous. He is cut down by a dozen swords, his body left bleeding in the dust. The soldiers then go on a rampage, hunting down and killing his entire faction, along with several other officials they deem responsible for the state of the empire. The emperor is powerless to stop them. The crown prince tries to reason with the commanders, but they are resolute. The army has tasted blood, and their anger is not yet sated. A terrifying silence falls over the camp. The soldiers stand with their bloody swords, their eyes now turning towards the imperial family escorters. Their message, delivered through their commander, is the army's final ultimatum. The eunuchs were part of the problem, they say, but they were not the true source of the rot. The real problem, the one that started it all, was the moral decay, the indulgence, the distraction that weakened the emperor's resolve and angered heaven. The army, the soldiers, the common people, they need a symbolic cleansing. They need a sacrifice to appease heaven and restore morale. And they have chosen their sacrifice. They want you. You are the red-faced disaster. You are the fox spirit. You are the luminous concubine whose story has been told and retold. The living embodiment of the court's fatal decadence. Your name, which has been used as a political weapon by ministers for years, has now been taken up by the common soldiers. It is the one simple, satisfying explanation for their immense suffering. Telling you, they believe, will purify the court and prove to heaven that the dynasty is ready to repent. This moment, known as the Wei Slope incident, is a classic and brutal example of scapegoating in a time of crisis. It's a phenomenon seen across cultures and history. When faced with a complex disaster they cannot control, societies often seek to identify and purge a single, symbolic source of evil. This act provides a false sense of control and a powerful, unifying narrative. The historical debate here is fierce. Did the soldiers genuinely believe this, fueled by years of propaganda, or were they manipulated by the crown prince's faction, who saw this as a perfect opportunity to eliminate a symbol of the old, corrupt court and consolidate their own power? The truth is likely a messy combination of both. The crown prince delivers the army's demand to his father. The emperor, in a moment of horrified clarity, refuses. He may be a broken ruler, but you are still one of the last living links to his own past, a reminder of a time before everything fell apart. He protests, he argues, he weeps, but his authority is gone. The commander of the guard makes it brutally clear if their demand is not met, they cannot guarantee the emperor's safety. The army that is supposed to be his protector has become his captor. They will not march, they will not fight, and they will likely turn on the royal family itself unless their thirst for a scapegoat is quenched. The choice is no longer between saving you and not saving you. The choice is between your life and the survival of the dynasty itself. The final, terrible weight of the Hongyan age, you Oshui curse, has now fallen upon you. The world shrinks to the confines of a small, dusty tent. Outside, the angry hum of the army is a constant, menacing presence. Inside, there is only silence and the cold, hard reality of your fate. The high-ranking eunuch, one who survived the purge and is now loyal to the crown prince, enters the tent. He does not look at you. He looks at the ground as he speaks, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. He tells you of the army's demand and the emperor's impossible choice. He doesn't need to state the conclusion. You are to be the sacrifice. He offers you 3 choices. A final, merciful courtesy granted to high-ranking members of the court who are condemned to die. A rope, a dagger, or a cup of poison. It is the illusion of choice in a situation where you have none. This was a common practice, allowing the condemned to avoid the shame of a public execution and maintain a final shred of dignity. It was a deeply ingrained ritual of saving face, even in death. In this final moment, a strange calm descends upon you. The fear is still there, a cold knot in your stomach, but the panic is gone. You have been living a kind of death for years, the death of your identity, the death of your freedom, the death of your hope. This is merely the final, physical act. You look back on your life, a flickering montage of images. You see your small village, the sun setting over the rice paddies. You see your mother's tear-streaked face as you climbed into the carriage. You see the cold, calculating eyes of the official who chose you. You see the crimson robes and the white peacock, symbols of a fleeting, dangerous glory. You see the face of noble consort Yan, broken and defeated, scrubbing laundry in a desolate courtyard. You see the melancholy eyes of the beautiful guard, Wei, another prisoner of his own appearance. Was it worth it? This is the question that hangs in the silent air of the tent. Was a few years of luxury, of being the most desired woman in the empire, worth this end? Was the power to bring glory to your family worth the price of your entire being? You think of the poem, A Lament for the Luminous Concubine. The poet painted you as a tragic romantic figure. The reality is so much dirtier, so much more political, so much more absurd. You are not dying for love. You are dying because an army needs a target for its anger, and your face was the most convenient one available. You think of the red-faced disaster label. You were blamed for a flood you never saw, for a rebellion you didn't start, for the decline of an empire you had no power to influence. Your crime was never what you did, but what you were. Your beauty was a blank canvas onto which an entire dynasty projected its anxieties, its failures, and its superstitions. The academic debate over the agency of women, like you, will rage for centuries. Were you a victim or a participant? Tape on or a player? Historians will argue over the Maui Slope incident, debating the political motivations of the commanders and the crown prince. They will analyze the social and economic factors that lead to the rebellion. They will write complex theses about the mandate of heaven, but they will rarely, if ever, consider what it felt like to be you. In this tent, with a rope, a dagger, and a cup of poison on the table, you make your choice. You choose the rope. It seems the quietest, the most vital. The eunuch nods, averts his eyes, and backs out of the tent, leaving you alone. You clutch the silken cord. It is surprisingly smooth, almost beautiful. The same material that once adorned your bed, that you wore as a sign of your status, is now the instrument of your death. There is a bitter, perfect irony in that. As you prepare for the final act, you don't think of the emperor. You don't think of the poets or the historians who will tell your story. You think of your father, lighting incense at the ancestral shrine, telling you not to bring them shame. You have tried. You have survived as long as you could. In your heart, you whisper a final, silent apology to the girl from the village, the girl who just wanted to be invisible. You are sorry you could not save her. You are sorry that her face was a gift the world decided to turn into a weapon, and then a target. Your only remaining choice is how to face the end of a story you never wrote. Your death is a transaction. The moment the eunuch confirms you are gone, a message is sent to the army commanders. The sacrifice has been made. A grim, collective sigh of relief seems to pass through the camp. The tension breaks. The soldiers, their anger appeased, return to their duties. The gears of the military machine begin to turn again. The next morning, the pathetic royal convoy, now significantly smaller and purified, continues its journey south. Your body is left behind, buried in an unmarked grave on a dusty, windswept slope, a footnote to a brutal negotiation. But your story does not end there. In fact, your death is a new beginning. It transforms you from a disgraced concubine into a legend. Immediately, your sacrifice becomes a powerful piece of propaganda for the reeling dynasty. The official narrative, crafted by the crown prince's new regime, is that a great evil has been purged. Your death is painted as a necessary, if tragic, turning point. It is the moment the court repented, cleansed itself of corrupting influences, and regained the favor of heaven. The army has subsequent victories, and there are a few, as they rally under the new leadership, are attributed to your removal. You are posthumously cast as the villain whose death saved the dynasty. But a different version of your story begins to spread among the common people. It is a more romantic, more tragic tale. The poets, who loved your story when you were alive, now have the perfect ending. They write new poems, not of a folk spirit, but of a tragic beauty who was a victim of circumstance, a flower destroyed by the storm. They write about the emperor's supposed heartbreak, about the cruelty of the soldiers, about the pathos of your lonely death. This is the version that will endure, the one that will be turned into plays and operas. In this new legend, the political complexities are sanded away. The story is simplified into a tragic romance. You become a symbol of beauty destroyed by a cruel world. A cautionary tale about the dangers of love in a time of war. The real you, the ambitious, frightened, resilient woman who navigated the treacherous court and tried to speak truth to power, is completely erased. You are replaced by two caricatures, the official villain of the court historians and the romantic victim of the poets. Here's a fascinating, if morbid, detail about the afterlife of famous figures like you, the creation of shrines. In the years and decades after your death, as your legend grows, local people near Ma Wei Slope begin to venerate your unmarked grave. They leave offerings of flowers and incense. They pray to you for luck and love or for protection against injustice. You, the woman who was executed to appease heaven, are slowly, unofficially, deified. You become a minor goddess, a folk deity whose power comes from the tragedy of your own story. This ignoramus, the blending of historical figures into the popular religious pantheon, is a common feature of East Asian folk beliefs. The historical debate, of course, continues. For centuries, Confucian scholars will use your story as the ultimate cautionary tale for emperors. Remember the luminous concubine. They will write, remember how beauty and indulgence can bring ruin to an empire. You become a permanent fixture in the moral education of princes. Your name synonymous with the ultimate political sin. Later, revisionist historians will emerge. They will question the official narrative. They will argue that you were nothing more than a convenient scapegoat, a victim of systemic misogyny and political maneuvering. They will try to rehabilitate your image, to portray you as an intelligent woman trapped by circumstance. This debate itself becomes part of your legacy, a conversation that echoes down through the dynasties. But all these stories, whether they cast you as villain, victim, or goddess, have one thing in common: they are not about you. They are about the people telling them. Your story becomes a mirror, reflecting the values, the anxieties, and the political agendas of each subsequent era. Your life is no longer your own, it is a piece of cultural property, endlessly reinterpreted. You, the real you, are gone. The girl from the village is buried in the dust of Ma Wei Slope. What remains is a ghost, a legend, a name that means a dozen different things to a dozen different people. You have achieved the one thing every emperor craves: immortality. But it is the immortality of a story, not a soul. A story that is endlessly told, but never truly understood. The centuries pass, dynasties rise and fall. The wooden marker on your grave, if there ever was one, rots away and turns to dust. The world moves on, but you remained. You are no longer a person of flesh and blood, but a ghost woven into the fabric of history. A name in a book, a question on an exam, from a place beyond time. You watch them argue over you. For the first few hundred years, the verdict is unanimous and harsh. The new, stable dynasty that eventually rose from the ashes of your old one needs a clear moral story. Their court historians, writing the official history of their predecessors, solidify your role as the archetypal villain. You are the bewitching woman, the ultimate cautionary tale. Schoolboys studying for the civil service examinations memorize your story as an example of what happens when the son of heaven succumbs to yin female, dark, passive influences, and neglects the yang male, bright, active duties of the state. You are a lesson, a warning, a political tool to enforce orthodoxy. Your humanity is irrelevant. Then, something interesting happens. Another dynasty comes along, overthrowing the one that followed yours. This new set of rulers has a different political need to legitimize their own conquest. They need to portray the dynasty they just defeated as not just morally weak, but also foolish and incompetent. And so, their historians take up your case again. This is a fascinating and weirdly common practice, the political rehabilitation of historical figures for contemporary gain. In their new voracious records, you are subtly reframed. You are no longer a malevolent fox spirit, but a tragically naive young woman, a victim, The emperor, who was infatuated with you, is now painted as an even greater fool. A man so weak he allowed a simple, beautiful girl to distract him while his officials ran amok. By making you more sympathetic, they make him look worse, thereby making their own usurpation of the throne seem all the more justified. And so the debate begins. Was she a villain or a victim, a cause of the collapse, or merely a symptom? The question becomes a favorite topic for scholars and poets who wish to appear thoughtful and contrarian. They write essays. They compose new plays. In one, you are a conniving mastermind. In another, you are a heartbreaking innocent martyr. Then comes the modern era. The arguments of the old historians, with their moralizing and their focus on great men, are replaced by new kinds of questions. The academics of this new age are armed with different tools: economics, sociology, feminist theory. They look at your story and see something else entirely. The economic historians barely mention you. They talk about tax revenues, land distribution, and shifts in trade routes. They argue the dynasty fell because of systemic fiscal failures that had been building for 100 years before you were even born. To them, you are a statistical irrelevance, a colorful but meaningless distraction from the real, material forces of history. The feminist scholars take a different approach. They reclaim you. They see you not as a villain or a victim, but as a woman with agency, however limited, fighting to survive in an oppressive patriarchal system. They analyze your rise to power as a masterful navigation of court politics. Your attempt to warn the emperor is not seen as madness, but as a brave, if doomed, act of political intervention. Your death at Wei Slope is the ultimate example of systemic misogyny, where a woman is made to pay the price for the failures of men. This is the great, ongoing debate that defines your legacy. Was your story a personal tragedy, or a structural one? Was your fate determined by your own choices, by the actions of the men around you, or by vast, impersonal forces far beyond anyone's control? The scholars write their books. They hold their conferences. They build their careers on the foundation of your unmarked grave. From your timeless vantage point, you watch them all. You see the neat theories, the elegant arguments, the passionate defenses, and the cold dismissals. They are all so certain. They are all so wrong. They can never know the simple, terrifying truth of your life, that it was all of those things at once. You were a pawn and a player. You were a victim and a survivor. You were an irrelevance who was made relevant by others, a nobody who became a symbol for everything. They can argue for 1,000 more years, but they will never capture the feeling of a warm rice cake in your hand, the terror of a powerful man's gaze, or the rough, silken texture of a robe in a dusty tent on a windswept hill. The answer to their great historical question is not in their books. It was buried with you. The voices of the historians, with their arguments and their theories, begin to fade now. They recede into the distance, becoming a soft, indistinct murmur, like the gentle hum of the fan in your room or the sound of a far-off river. The weight of the story, with its silks and its sorrows, begins to lift from your shoulders. The sharp edges of the past grow soft, blurring into the quiet, peaceful darkness that surrounds you. Let the image of the golden roofs and crimson walls dissolve. Let the ink of the poets scroll in the dust of that lonely slope drift away like motes of dust in a fading sunbeam. Your own thoughts can begin to drift now, unmoored from the narrative, floating gently on the surface of a deep and tranquil sea. There are no more choices to be made, no more battles to be fought, no more roles to be played. There is only this moment of profound and quiet ease. Feel the rhythm of your own breathing, a slow and steady tide, pulling you further and further away from the waking world. Each breath is a soft wave, washing away the last remnants of the day, leaving behind only stillness. You are sinking gently into the coolness of your pillow, into the comfort of your bed, into the deep, welcoming silence of the night. The journey is over. The tale is told. All that is left is to rest, to float, to dream, and you drift, weightless, into the quiet harbor of your own making. The end of the article. Good night.